Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for June the 27th lesson in A Course in Miracles Workbook for Students, which is the review lesson 178. God is but love, and therefore so am I. Let not my mind deny the thought of God, which is review lesson 165. God is but love, and therefore so am I. And lesson 166 review, I am entrusted with the gifts of God, all sandwiched between God is but love, and therefore so am I. Kind of like a double-decker Oreo cookie, with the cream being the review, let not my mind deny the thought of God. And lesson 166, I am entrusted with the gifts of God, all sandwiched between God is but love, and therefore so am I. So let's go back and take just a brief moment to look at 165 and 166 again, so we can kind of have a little bit of a little boost on remembering what that lesson was all about. Let not my mind deny the thought of God. Paragraph 3 says, who would deny his safety and his peace, his joy, his healing, and his peace of mind, his quiet rest, his calm awakening, if he but recognized where they abide? Would he not instantly prepare to go where they are found, abandoning all else as worthless in comparison with them? And having found them, would he not make sure they stay with him and he remains with them? All right, so clearly we would want all those things. If we knew where they were at, we would not deny it. Matter of fact, the next paragraph he starts off by saying, deny not heaven. Heaven is all these things. Your safety, your peace, your joy, your healing, your peace of mind. He says that twice in the same sentence. Your quiet rest, your calm awakening. All these things are what we want. Ask with desire that we receive these things. Ask with desire. You need not be sure that you need not be sure that you request the only thing you want. You don't even have to have assurance. Just ask for it. But when you have received, you will be sure you have the treasure you have always sought. What would you then exchange for it? What would induce you now to let it fade away from your ecstatic vision? For this sight proves that you have exchanged your blindness for the seeing eyes of Christ. Your mind has come to lay aside denial and accept the thought of God as its inheritance. I also want to read the last paragraph in that one. Practice today in hope. And this is all, remember, this is all under, let not my mind deny the thought of God. So how do we deny the thought of God? By not accepting the vision of Christ, the forgiven world, the world of the beauty, heaven that's here now. Practice today in hope, for hope indeed is justified. Your doubts are meaningless, for God is certain. Okay, your doubts are meaningless. Why? Because God is certain. And the thought of him is never absent. Sureness must abide with you who are host to him. This course removes all doubts which you have interposed between him and your certainty of him. We count on God and not upon ourselves to give us certainty. Remember that. We count on God and not upon ourselves to give us certainty. And in his name we practice, as his word directs we do. His sureness lies beyond our every doubt. His love remains beyond our every fear. The thought of him is still beyond all dreams and in our minds according to his will. All right. So Let not my mind deny this. Let not my mind deny the thought of God. Allow God to have his rightful place in your mind. And then, I am entrusted with the gifts of God. All between these concepts are always interspersed with the present idea, God is but love, and therefore so am I. And then review 166, I'm entrusted with the gifts of God. Look at these first two paragraphs. All things are given you. All things are given you. God's trust in you is limitless. That's nice to know. He knows his Son. He gives without exception, holding nothing back that can contribute to your happiness. He knows his son and daughter, and he doesn't hold anything back that can contribute to your happiness. So why would you not want his will? It's because you're deluded and in a dream, a fantasy that's a nightmare, really. And yes, and yet, unless your will is one with his gifts are not received. But what would make you think there is another will than his? Paragraph 2. Here's the paradox that underlies the making of the world. This world is not the will of God, so it is not real. This world exhibits pain and death, sickness and sorrow, so it can't be real. Yet those who think it real must still believe there is another will, and one that leads to opposite effects from those he wills. Impossible indeed. But every mind that looks upon the world and judges it as certain, solid, trustworthy, and true, believes in two creators, or in one, himself alone, but never in one God. The gifts of God are not acceptable to anyone who holds such strange beliefs. So we want to quit holding this idea that what we see is so real. There's a reality behind the appearance that is real. And that's where love has always got you covered. All right. Let's look down paragraph 13. I thought that might be a helpful one to remember. The gifts are yours, entrusted to your care to give to all who chose the lonely road you have escaped. Okay, these are our gifts, this gift of happiness, of peace. They're ours now. And to keep them ours, we've got to give them away. They do not understand, they but pursue their wishes, the ones that are still on the lonely road that we've escaped. They don't understand that they're but pursuing their own wishes. It is you who teach them now. And how do we teach them? For you have learned of Christ. There's another way for them to walk. Teach them by showing them the happiness that comes to those who feel the touch of Christ and recognize God's gifts. Let sorrow not tempt you to be unfaithful to your trust. Your hand becomes the giver of Christ's touch. Your change of mind becomes the proof that who accepts God's gifts can never suffer anything. You are entrusted with the world's release from pain. Wow, what a trust. We've been entrusted with the world's release from pain. Betray it not. Become the living proof of what Christ's touch can offer everyone. God has entrusted all his gifts to you. Be witness in your happiness to how transformed the mind becomes, which chooses to accept his gifts and feel the touch of Christ. Such is your mission now, for God entrusts the giving of his gifts to all who have received them. He has shared his joy with you, and now you go to share it with the world. All right, isn't that beautiful? So, remember, God is but love, and therefore so am I. Let not my mind deny the thought of God. God is but love, and therefore so am I. I am entrusted with the gifts of God. God is but love, and therefore so am I. All right, we'll read it one more time before we close, but let's take a minute and or a few short minutes, and go back and look at the last portion, start in paragraph 104, page 16 in my edition of the text. It's the last of chapter 1, under the distortion of miracle impulses. And the way I kind of look at that is that God is always giving us inspiration. But by the time it reaches our physical awareness, we've sometimes filtered it through so many odd and crazy belief systems that it's hard for the purity of it to reach us. It's still the only reality, but in this experience, we seem to be involved in the contradiction to that, and where fear seems real and death seems real. But we're learning that we are going to line our thoughts up where God's Son can suffer nothing, and you are God's son and daughter. So kind of keep that in mind when we look at this. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion, because it induces rather than straightens out the basic level confusion which underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of this world. Inappropriate physical impulses, or misdirected miracle impulses, result in conscious guilt if expressed and depression if denied. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. This is because not doing it is a denial of self. Denial of error results in projection. Correction of error brings release. Lead us not into temptation means do not let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to our brothers with anything external. So there he's making mention of the Lord's Prayer, and he says, lead us not into temptation. He's saying what that means is do not let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to our brothers with anything external. The world you see with these eyes is we need to learn to relate with the intangible, with the abstract, with the reality that survives death, with mind, with heart. All right? Child of God, paragraph 105. Child of God, you are created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not lose sight of this. Child of God, you are created. Child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not lose sight of this. The love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another, because the real vision is so dim. Everyone can use his body best by enlarging man's perception so he can see the real vision. This vision is invisible to the physical eye. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render itself unnecessary. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render itself unnecessary. Learning to do this is the only real reason for its creation. Wow. Paragraph 106. Fantasies of any kind are distorted forms of thinking because they always involve twisting perception into unreality. Fantasy is a debased form of vision. Vision and revelation are closely related, while fantasy and projection are more closely associated because both attempt to control external reality according to false internal needs. Twist reality in any way and you are perceiving destructively. twist reality in any way and you're perceiving destructively. That's why we want to just get to the place of saying we want truth to be true. And nothing else is true. Just let it be. I liked what was it, John Lennon, one of the Beatles, that said, let it be, let it be, let it be. Anyway, I love that. That's what he's wanting us to do, just to let things be. Don't try to distort anything. He's going to tell us about how satisfying that is in just a moment. Twist reality in any way and you are perceiving destructively. Reality was lost through usurpation, which in turn produced tyranny. I told you that you are now restored to your former role in the plan of the atonement, but you must still choose freely to devote yourselves to the greater restoration. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. And remember, you have the power to see them not as a slave, but as free, because in reality, they already are free. This is your job, to see their perfection through the eyes of Christ. You don't have to wait on time for that. It's here now. Heaven. Isn't that beautiful? Heaven is here now. It's in our midst, Jesus said 2,000 years ago. I told you that you are now restored to your former role in the plan of the atonement, but you must still choose freely to devote yourselves to the greater restoration. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Complete restoration of the sonship is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. Let's read that last sentence again. Complete restoration of the sonship is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. Is that your true goal? To see yourself and everyone in the world saved from pain and safely in heaven, in God's loving arms? And the last paragraph of this chapter. No fantasies are true. They are distortions of perception by definition. They are a means of making false associations and obtaining pleasure from them. Man can do this only because he is creative. But although he can perceive false associations, he can never make them real, except to himself. Man believes in what he creates. If he creates miracles, he will be equally strong in his belief in them. The strength of his conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. And fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both. Those last two sentences again. If he creates miracles, he will be equally strong in his belief in them. The strength of his conviction, the miracle-minded, the strength of the miracle workers, you can think of it, the strength of his conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. So when you are so confident, that energy is going to transfer to the one who needs the miracle. The strength of his conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. And fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both. Wow. So the kingdom of heaven is now. Don't say that there's time to wait until the harvest. It's now. We can see everyone is in the kingdom of heaven because that's where they truly are. All right, lesson 178. God is but love, and therefore so am I. Let not my mind deny the thought of God. God is but love, and therefore so am I. I am entrusted with the gifts of God. God is but love, and therefore so am I. Hey, I've got a special little plant here that who knows what this one is. This is, what is it called? Asclepias tuberosa. That's the scientific name. It's butterfly milkweed. Monarchs need it to lay their eggs, and they feed on the nectar. It does have some poison toxins, mild, in the leaves for for mammals and whatnot. So it's not recommended to eat it, and it has a bitter flavor to help you know not to eat it. But even with that said, look at all these uses that indigenous people have used it for. It says that indigenous tribes, I found this on the ChesapeakeBay.net, and it says many indigenous tribes applied milkweed sap for wart removal, chewed its roots to treat dysentery. It was also used in salves and infusions to treat swelling, rashes, coughs, fevers, and asthma. So anyway, it's amazing. Hey, one more thing I wanted to show you. These don't transport very well. I only picked it about an hour ago, and it's already, but you've seen the big white flowers on the side of the road, and it says elderberry. You see the little baby elderberries that they're starting to form, the big white flower head, that'll turn into the nice big, but it's not droopy like that when it's growing, but even though it's in water and it's only been picked about an hour ago, it tends to droop pretty much when it's picked. Doesn't hold out real well. But anyway, I just wanted to show you so that you'd get a better idea of the, that does not look like what it looks like when it's in its nice foliage, all erect and magnificent. I showed you a little over a month ago the elderberry that I had harvested and put in pots. They've recovered nicely. I've been growing in the shade. They could be planted now. I want to show you that after a little over a month, look at the roots that have developed already. See the little white roots all the way through there? And those are just about ready and it's holding itself together. That is ready to be planted. You'd want to keep it watered well if you planted it in the summer. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to show you what elderberry looked like at this time of the year. All right, but and remember the butterfly milkweed. We want to really, maintain butterfly gardens. Monarchs are very important for the environment. Lots of birds eat them, and they've got an amazing migration pattern all the way back to Mexico every year. So that amazing little flutterbys. All right, one last time. God is but love, and therefore so am I. Let not my mind deny the thought of God. God is but love, and therefore so am I. I am entrusted with the gifts of God. God is but love, and therefore so am I.